This is session 8, and there will be 2 more sessions before I take quite a break from this. Tonight, our discussion is going to be about backing up your horse. It's going to be, again, sort of revisiting backing, the way we revisited yesterday some concepts that were, I think, misunderstood in some ways. And tomorrow and the next night, I'm going to talk about submission and many aspects of submission that will include appropriate firmness and perhaps some gray area where people can slip into excessive emotionally based force or reactive force instead of perhaps appropriate firmness in a proactive way, when a horse will actually learn something from it that's constructive instead of learn something about you that isn't going to pay off well in the future. But today, on the way to those on the way to future discussions, that we have a really important thing to talk about today, which is, I think, misunderstood by some people and certainly considered unnecessary or perhaps boring or just a footnote in the training notes of time, people's journals, people's minds. I don't think the backup really has got much. It hasn't received the attention it deserves, because I think it's quite often that people don't understand and I didn't for many years either, understand what a phenomenal foundation in forward movement can be created and sustained by fortifying your relationship with the horse through your use of 2 diagonals in the backup, the front leg and the opposite hind in alternating steps to complete 1 stride. 2 steps, 1 stride, 4 feet. This is as balanced as the trot, but certainly not as fast. But in many ways, it's reassuring to a horse to be able to balance when he's backing at your request. And I say that because a horse is not going to back up normally in that way. Usually a horse doesn't back up unless he's alarmed or being forced back by another horse or moving out of the way of something coming at him. I don't know what it could be. Maybe a tree falling out of the woods or waves in the ocean if he's being pushed up into the ocean or something. I don't know. But it's not that cadence and that stride, that way of moving is not so normal. Horses are forward-looking and forward-moving animals by nature, so the backup is certainly possible. But when people ask a horse to back up, and there are many reasons they do, but I'd say the most common reason a horse is requested or told to back up is because he's in somebody's way. Interesting how that happens. I think most of the time the horse gets in somebody's way because he's tempted up in there. And he's tempted up in there by either pulled in there on a lead rope or led up to somebody who might want to brush his mane or take some stuff out of his eye or put his gear on, maybe administer some medication. There could be a lot of reasons. Braid his mane for the show. Lots of things. You want your horse available. But then the question is, how do you get him away from you? And there are as many ways to do it as there are people, but there'll be a lasting good effect from it instead of a sort of rejecting, careless push-off that leaves the horse with all of that energy and all of that misunderstanding about how to leave backwards in a nice way. When I'm asking a horse, let's say I have a bunch of colts that are coming up out of curiosity. I mean young ones maybe, 8 months, yearlings, 18 months old, just a whole pack of them. If I want them to go away, sometimes I just take off my coat, and that is enough to scatter them, and I don't worry about whether they leave as a group or scatter individually or whether they jump backwards and do a turn over the hocks in one direction or another. None of that matters, but what's important is that they can leave when they need to. when they're told to or asked to. And those are two different things. And I don't like to bring up resistance when I ask for something from anybody. I don't like to ask if it's not appropriate and it's not possible to do what I'm asking. I like to try to time my requests in all ways for the recipient, the receiver of this request, to be able to fulfill it if it's that important to me that I don't do it myself. Now, I can't back the horse up for himself. He's got to back his own self up. So when I ask, I like to do it in a way that I can follow him. Lead me backwards, for example. I want to lead him forward. I would like him to lead me backwards. And it took a long time for me to understand that that was more important than him obeying me. Get out of here because I said so. Move when I push you. Go away when I say. Those are different types of requests and demands, and they produce a different type of response, believe me. I'm sure some of you know what I mean. So the thing that's important when you're asking a horse to back up is that you have your hand. I don't have a halter and rope here, do I? Well, okay, let's just pretend. Do we have one? Do we have a halter and rope? Oh, what do you know? I'm sitting on it. Here it is. Okay, here we go. And I'm riding barefoot. It's 95 degrees in here, believe me. Been out in the cold all day, and I mean really cold. So cold that kind of you can't think about much. Now, in this place, you need a fan, you need an air conditioner in here now. Socks are too much. Okay, so here we are. Thank goodness for wood heat. So, if this horse is here, he's facing this way, I'm facing backwards, okay? If I take him here, or here, underneath, and I say, go on, get back, and I'm pushing on his neck. I've got to have an imagination for this now. I'm pushing on his neck, or I take the rope here, and his head is here, okay. I don't know how, okay, his head's here. His head's here. So I have my rope here, and I'm pushing on his shoulders, or on his neck, or on his shoulder blades, or I've got my hand over his nose, like this. It's really not such a good demonstration at the moment, but anyway, so here's his nose, and I'm pushing him back. I've got my rope here, and I'm pushing. You know what he's learning? Two things that I don't want him to learn. He's learning how strong I'm not, number one, and he's learning how to push me, because I'm pushing him. It's very hard for anyone who is shown something not to learn it. If you don't want your child to eat dinner like this, with their arms on the table and the bowl here, just shoveling in the food and going to sleep at the table, well, then maybe the adults in the family shouldn't do it either. So to say. That example, maybe. But you get what I mean. You don't want your black dog to get on the couch. Don't let the gray dog get on the couch. They learn from watching. They learn from what they experience, like we do. So the more you push, and the more you push hard at him, and he's either unable to back up because you have a wheelbarrow near him, or you're backing him past a row of horses that one of them is not his friend, he's got his head hanging out, ready to bite him right in the ass when he gets back in there. There's a lot of reasons that you could not be thinking clearly about the setup and this situation within which you're trying to tell this horse he has to obey you now, okay? So let's just say you force it. Say you go get a stick and you pound him on his legs. Or you go get a stud chain and put it over his nose and start jerking that thing until suddenly he's all over getting back. He's up, he's back, he's running back. Say, there, I backed you up. Okay, well, that's good. You backed him up, but he's learning to back up, or is he learning to evade you? Is he learning to work with you, or is he learning to escape you? Is he moving through escaping to correctness? I will back up if you tell me, and only if you tell me. Or is he backing up as a partner who's going to be ready to go forward with the lesson learned about backup and carry that backup in him in all forward motion, which is the point. I don't want to be loping if I can't find a way in my lope stride to access a free shoulder and really have that horse go down and back in each stride and carry me up and forward. I can't ask people who haven't ridden with the need for these things. If you don't have the need for this, I'm going to call it an isometric. I don't know if it's an isometric. I'm just saying it. Maybe that is what it is. But I think it's a way of, let's just say it's an internal sort of reorganization of your capacity to leave the stop in the start and to leave the start in the stop. And I mean an efficient start, not stumbling over your own front legs, kicking up dirt, almost going down to your nose because your hips are dragging out the back like a caboose. A caboose being the last car on a train, dragging it around the way most horses do today because of how they're handled in the face all the time. So what I want to do is to turn my thumb down. Up, need my horse again. I'm going to turn my thumb down. So I turn my thumb down. Hey Rick, could you do me a favor for a second? I'm having a heck of a time with this horse that has no head. Can you hold this for a second? Just hold that up there for a minute. Well, maybe I just need you to, maybe, okay, I'll stand here. Wait a minute, I'll stand here. Maybe I'm even in the, I don't even know if I'm in the picture anymore.
There it is, there's your monitor.
Yeah, I know, but that's when I was on the saddle a minute ago.
Oh, yeah.
Well, just hold it up there for a second, a little higher. So here's my horse. Oh, no, I'm not in it. Can you stand right here, down here, so I can do it? If you stand there, I think I can do it. Let's see. All right, so hold it up so that thing is, yeah, up more, please. Okay, there we go. Maybe I have it here. Just a second. Let's see what this TV does. You can see. There's no sound in that.
That's right, it's turned off.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I guess you have to come more to me. Now what?
Well, we can see it. We can see it live right here.
Okay.
You want the halter in the picture?
I want this. I want my arm in the picture.
All right, your arm and the halter
Yes,
are in the
please.
picture now.
Okay. So if I have my hand down like this, and that horse is pushing on me, okay? If I have my arm here,
Move back a little.
okay,
Good.
then that means that I can lock my elbow, okay? My thumb is down. I'm not on the rope down here. I'm on the halter knot right here, okay? So if I want this horse to, do you think I'm in the picture there? No, I'm not. I gotta be. Look, I've got the picture right here.
Just your hand in the halter. Look, see, it's right there. That's what's in the picture.
Okay. Well,
Well, that's from a couple of
this is
seconds.
annoying. Hang on a minute. I gotta fix something. They won't mind. I don't think they're gonna mind. I've got to do this right. I'm only shot at this. Can you stand right here, please? So this horse is behaving properly. Thank you. All right. I think we got
But
it.
now you're probably not in the frame.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I'm gonna just keep talking.
Hold on for a second.
What? All right. Sorry. This is what do we call these? It's just called a technical difficulty.
Yeah,
Right.
back up a little bit.
Okay. We're in the process of crowding the camera.
Hold that right there.
That's the point. Okay, I'm sorry about this. Okay, we ready?
Now you're in business.
Okay, the horse is crowding me here. There we go. All right, there we are. So here we are. So now my thumb is down. And what I want to tell you that I observe is that most people start like this. Okay, now here's the shoulder. And they just start. Stuffing the horse's head and jaw and chin right down back into his neck as they're looking down and bearing their weight into the shoulder and the neck, okay? Well, the reason it doesn't work, could you hold that up a bit? The reason that you get a begrudging, resistant step from that is that the most important thing you can do is not lean. You add space in here between your hip and your bottom rib. You stand up in here, and when you do that, that shoulder will come up by itself, okay? If you walk up and shake hands to somebody like this, some dead fish handshake, and you've got bad posture, it's not a lovely experience, and it doesn't bring out a sense of elevation or motivation in anybody, okay? So you're not going to get the response and respect from your horse either by sinking down and by bearing your weight, sum total that it is maybe as much as his head and 2 inches of his neck. It's just not an impressive or elegant or appropriate presentation for a flight animal to hang on his head and shove him in the neck. Especially when you consider that this lead rope that you're getting him used to for 2, 3, 4 years before you really get riding him seriously, that lead rope is going to be living as a rein right in that shoulder groove, right about there in your imaginary, here's my shoulder, here's my head up here, here's my neck. So if I want to have that horse light on my rein and responsive to the motion up and down that rein, before he has to feel what's called collection or contact for collection, which is what most people just go straight to the bit and they start seesawing and hammering and just working the metal into that face. You don't know what you miss. You don't know what you miss when you spend time doing that. You don't know what you're missing. And it has to do that a well-educated neck will give you 4, 5, 600 pounds brought up and back by the horse for the asking when you lower that down that shoulder groove. That's what Bill was spending all that time showing me in that bench he had there, is how to get that front end light by releasing these lines down that shoulder. When you drop that, when you pick your reins up and you set those reins down, that shoulder comes up to you. That's what's happening in yourself. When you bring your weight, you bring your torso up. I'm not talking about this, I'm not talking about this, or I'm not talking about that. Standing on your toes or sticking your neck up or picking up yourself this way it's not it. It's very far from it. You have to, right here, you take your end of your middle finger, you stick it on your hip, you take your thumb and you put it right on the bottom rib of yours, and now add that much space. When you shift your posture like that, that horse will come up unless he's closed out, gone, fishing, away from too much, overexposed to too many things, too bored from routines, exhausted, hurt, or other things. But a horse that's aware, when you do that, he will do it. When I was saying about that in the saddle, that when you rise up in that saddle, and I'm not talking about standing on your feet, I'm talking about adding space in here, like not having your ribs collapse, not throwing your shoulders forward this way. You just, not talking about any exaggerated shoulders back or anything like this. I'm just talking about coming up right there. So when you do that in your saddle, the floor of your pelvis comes up off that saddle, and a lot of horses will come up to try to find it. They'll release their own shoulder right up to you, okay? That's enough for them to take a really animated step back. Those front feet are going to snap right up off the ground. They're not going to have any drag marks. There's not going to be scraping all over the floor of the arena like there is everywhere you go. These horses have to step back with a really animated step. You want to really feel the elevation. You want to see them clear the ground with real footsteps, not just being pulled back by the face with their chin on their chest or 1 or 2 people shoving them back at the shoulders. As I say, that leaves them with the understanding that you're not very strong or polite or clear about what you want. Okay? So when you have your hand this way, down here, thumb up, or this way, and you're shoving in the neck, what happens too often, and for too many reasons to say, but your hand can come here. The whole horse can land on you here. You have half a chance if something happens, let's say another horse comes running up, you have half a chance if you blocked your elbow to be at least shoved over. You have half a chance of just being knocked out of the way and living through it. If a horse lands on you because you don't let go and he's suddenly here, you get the side of his face or his shoulder in your ribs or his face in the side of your head. That qualifies as, got it now, thank you, a lot. That qualifies as,
Saddle again.
yeah, that'd be great. That qualifies as a problem. And besides, to say nothing of how much it hurts. And I mention this because the technique that you use, the approach that you take in all the things you do with these horses is going to have a direct bearing on the outcome, by the way. There's just no way around it. So now I get back on trigger and I'm going to show you something here. And that is that when I want to back a horse up, what I was talking about before, okay? Let's say you can do a test right in the beginning. If your reins here, just lift your reins straight up. Now, of course, the shoulders are going to be separating out these reins like this, but you lift these reins up about a little bit over your head and just drop them down. You might have to do that a time or two. If your horse is asleep, just wake him up by tapping on your saddle horn or the pommel of your English saddle. Or if you have a wrist watch, you can just kind of snap your rein buckle. If you have English reins, take your buckle and just tap it on your wrist watch. But you wake him up so you know he's with you but not moving forward. And then you just take your reins up here and drop him down his neck. You start to tell him that shoulder groove right here on either side there, which is where your reins are going to lay, that matters to you. Once he knows that matters to you, it'll start to matter to him. In any case, you can kind of see where you're starting by whether he brings his shoulders up a little bit. And don't rehearse this a lot or you'll dull him out. Just do it sort of to see where he is. Do a little check for yourself. So this is the point of this. You could say, yeah, well, he backs up for me. Sounds like a lot of work. It's a lot of thinking. But, there's no point in doing something if you don't do it well. At least that's the way I feel. And if you're going to be involved with horses, it doesn't mean you have to win by any means. It doesn't mean you have to be famous or have people watch you and things. It just means that there has to be some measure of joy or happiness or fulfillment, some contentment. A horse that's happy, you're happy. A horse that's healthy, well-fed, well-kept, not wanting for freedom, not wanting for exercise or friends. I realize I probably said some things at the end of my delivery yesterday that either bothered some people or hurt your feelings. I hope I didn't. But when I talk about don't pack your stable with unexercised, over-blanketed, supplemented horses, what I mean is not that any one of those things in themselves is wrong, but the cumulative effect, the layered effect of shoes that don't get changed often enough, horses that are standing anywhere from 20 hours a day to a week between getting out of a stall, overfed, unexercised, no fresh air, and blanketed. The reason I'm talking about that is that those circumstances exist far, far, far too frequently. There's nothing wrong with a blanketed horse. There are a million reasons for doing it. But when you begin to add other things that money can't buy, like the commitment to that horse's mental equilibrium, the commitment to that horse's ability to think for you when he needs to and do the right thing, think the right thought and make the right move to help you both when he has the chance. Those are things that are not the result of money. Those are the things that are the result of thinking about the world you're making for him or her as lived and as perceived from their point of view. And if you can start to climb inside those horses' minds and you can start to look at yourself anytime that you're around them take a good look at yourself from their point of view. Start to assess, honestly, the feedback you get. And be open, be humble before that horse, and be open to what he can teach you about you. Because there's nothing, if you're going to spend time around horses, boy, if it's not fun, why are you doing it? It's a lot of work, and it costs a lot of money. So I think the thing to really have at the forefront of your thoughts is, okay, by now you're wondering, okay, Desmond, what's the deal with his backup? Why is it so important? Well, it's important for many reasons. One is because if you don't have a backup that he understands with you on board, and he runs backwards or has a flight response backwards and is not used to carrying weight backwards or maintaining a diagonal with integrity, meaning that you have a 2-beat backup, not a 3-beat backup or a 4-beat backup, or one where he is actually tripping over himself or standing on himself with you on top, and you're crouched forward and not knowing what to do or holding the mane or looking down. A horse can do a backward roll on top of you that fast. Really. Quick. Over you go. So, if for no other reason that you want him to have the experience of moving quickly backwards, I mean, Matt, what if 20 turkeys jump up in your face out of the woods? Half of New England is covered with turkeys. You could have Thanksgiving every 2 seconds around here. So they offer themselves in flocks of 20 at the worst time. On the youngest horses, you can have them just jump up. It's just like a landscape, nothing but feathers. And you'll get a horse to back up with that. But if he already knows how to back up with you, then he can just, instead of running backwards and getting trapped in the visual, the panorama of all these birds, which I've seen this, that's how I'm talking about it. Instead of getting stuck and feeling that he can't go either way because there are so many birds in each eye, if he already knows how to back up with you, this is just an example. You take 2 steps back, roll over the hocks, and haul out of there. So the usefulness of a backup that he understands is the integrity of the diagonal. Excuse me. Is the integrity of, you got the integrity of the diagonal, number one, but then also you start to learn, if you begin to experiment with backing circles, on how to open a shoulder in one direction while the opposite hip is reaching in the other. Now, this is important because most of the horses that you're going to see have, I guess the only conservative way to describe this, the only accurate way to describe it, is they're going to have some compromise in the hindquarters for reasons I've been talking about for 6 months. If the horse has not got a leg at each corner, if he's not well contoured, well muscled, and got his stifles and his hocks and his fetlocks and his hooves aligned in a way that forward motion is really forward motion, and there's not a lot of loss of energy and momentum and let's just say thrust, forward power, lost in weak joints. Okay, you got weak hocks, weak stifles, rotation, imbalanced feet, a sacrum that is crowded like that. Maybe one part is under, the other part is up, or vice versa, or it's folded in on itself. This happens. I've been to the bone pile many times. I've looked at what these horses are looking like after their birds have picked them clean. I'll just say it like that. I've looked at skeletons for long enough to know that it's not what I'm seeing in live horses. I now know what it looks like. I don't go to the science department at the schools, or I don't go to the vet schools. I've just seen it enough. I've started to put 2 and 2 together. I realize how we keep them, some of the things we do, the routines that we have with them. So much handling on one side, quick stops, quick starts on horses that aren't fit, feet that are neglected, gear that doesn't fit, way too much confinement, lots of procedures and corrections and cross ties where they can't move, which causes them to just leave the building, load the forehand, and tune you out. This is just the beginning of a list that's longer than a wet week about why they don't engage fully. And to think that you're going to have a partnership with someone who's half on the job, boy, forget that. That's a waste of time all the way. So the part that I want you to think about is does your muscle memory and what do your daily habits, what do your goals and routines contribute to that horse leaving mentally, just leaving you the body to deal with that stuck body or that vacancy, vacancy. It leaves too much up to guesswork. You're guessing what he's thinking, and he doesn't care what you're thinking. That's awful. Think about that if you were talking about your business partner, your best friend. You're wondering how they think about what you decided to wear or what you just said or what your last decision was about spending or God knows what. And they're just waiting for you to go away. That's the way a lot of horses look if you start looking carefully. I believe it. You can tell me what you think. I don't know all the horses, but I've been in enough situations to see that they get in a deep survival mode, which is under the subhead of tolerance. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that once you are rounding the corner of this sort of commonplace way of getting along with horses or experiencing them, once you see what they can really share with you, they'll show you so much about what they are and who they are, if they know that you care and they know that you're paying attention. Now, how does this land on the ears of somebody who's got to deal with 8 or 10 horses a day that maybe they don't even know their names? Maybe they're dealing with 20 horses a day. Maybe you're just hired to gallop in circles. Maybe you clean the stalls. But I've seen people who clean the stalls that have a personal relationship with every single horse that they clean the stall for. It's really up to the individual. I've seen some wonderful, wonderful, happy horses that just look out for that special person who's coming down the hall with that rake. They don't even feed them, but they have a nice word for them. They don't push them out of the way. They ask them to step back, and they open the door, and they go in and do what they have to do, and they leave. And they give them a little nod or just a syllable. I don't even know what language, but I've seen it in different places from time to time. You get one dedicated stall guy, barn keeper, been there 10 years, 20 years. He knows every horse. And to him, they mean something. And it's just like any response you get from another being. When you matter, it feels like you matter. When you don't matter, that feels that way too. So you take your pick. What I say this for is that you're on these horses, you pay their bills, you love them, or you think you do, or you love them in the best way you can. And that's not about treats. It's about respect. It's about letting that horse be a horse and not be a stand-in for something else that's missing in your life. It's leave the horse in the horse. That's the best thing you can do. Just leave the horse in there. And that's what I meant by overpacking your barn with horses that you're being paid to have them there, but they're not really having the experience of being a horse on a horse's terms. And the reason I mention that is because by the time you get actually up on those horses, they can be infuriating to ride. And you can get frustrated. You can get frustrated to the point where you feel like your face is bright red and you got sweat pouring down the back of your neck because you're just so fed up with what you're trying to get. You're trying to get results from something that's been in a stall too long, on a feed that's too hot, without exercise, and everything else is wrong. They need to move. They need to gallop. They need to run. If nothing else, put them on a hot walker for 2 or 3 times a day, not once for an hour, not once for half an hour. If you have really no time for these horses as a trainer, I'd make sure they get out. Even if you have someone who's hired to take them out and graze. Let them put their heads down and get some grass a little bit. That'll mean a lot to them. These are just things I've noticed. I empathize with people who have too much to do. I'm not criticizing it. And I'm not saying anybody who's in the middle of this industry is doing something wrong. I don't need to say that because a horse will tell you. Long before I have a chance to say anything, it's not my business what you do. What's my business that you don't get hurt. That's just my self-assigned job, because if you know something about horses and people and you've got a horse business, you getting hurt's the worst thing that can happen to the whole thing. So the way you don't get hurt is you know where the feet are, and you know how to talk to that horse about what you'd like him to do with his feet. And after you get your backup that has these steps in it, both on the ground and under saddle, you want him to start to be, first of all, you need his attention. And then you need his awareness that you are about to ask him something. Now, sometimes it'll be really hard to get a horse's attention. You might be the 5th trainer, 6th trainer he's had in 2 years. He doesn't like trainers anymore, or doesn't care what they have to offer. Maybe you just have to run your zipper up and down in your coat a little bit, change the presentation. Maybe you have on an oilskin jacket or some fancy Gore-Tex thing, and you just take your fingernail and scratch it, and he'll hear a noise he hasn't heard before associated with somebody. Or maybe you take your teeth, you just make a noise like that. Something to get his attention and have him think, oh, that's different. That's different. Or maybe you don't walk up and pet his face. Maybe you walk up and turn away from him and pet nothing. Maybe you walk up and you scratch his hoof with your boot. Anything to get him thinking in a new way and waiting for what you might do next. And then you ask him to come up. And I'm not talking now about putting his head up in the air over your head. I'm just talking about coming to attention, showing some interest. So the motivation that you can inspire with sound or sight, all these things have a place there, okay? You have to experiment a little bit. And then when you want him to go back, you might have to just see that he's made his thought to do it. And then you're done for that moment. And he says, she liked that. He liked that. You can often see between the shoulders, they have these muscles in the front, right down below at the base of the neck. Sometimes just before they're ready to lift, those muscles will contract. The leg they're about to take, the diagonal they're about to take, that'll get tight. You can just relax and release him. Say, that was a good thought. You're headed in the right direction. Take it in small, tiny, tiny bite steps, because what you really want this horse to do is to start thinking about backing up in a way that is because of you, not in spite of you, and maybe not even because of you. I got a better one, but he does it for you and with you. Take the make out of it and get him so that he can back away from you a little bit and you can follow him. That doesn't mean you have to have an arm that's 2 meters long. You just have to ask in a way that he begins to move before you do. You start on your heels, not on your toes. Make sure you're breathing so you're not ready to push on him. We worked on that a lot today up here in freezing, frozen New Hampshire. Ice block, New Hampshire. And I had some things I wanted to say here now. I actually took some notes. This is the first time I've done it. I wanted to talk about, turns, because let's say someone says, okay, take your horses over there to the right. That could be a friend telling you that they want you to go with them, an instructor, it could be anybody. It could be part of a horse show pattern, reining pattern, how you're going to take some fences. It's really important to understand the rules of the game, because for a horse, if he's being asked to go right, his first question is, what do you mean, right? How do you want me to do it? You want me to take both ends reaching equally? You want me to go right by taking my left foreleg across my right track and my right hip to the outside across my left hip? I mean, how you want me to go that way? Or do you want me to set my right front leg in the ground and swing my hips around to the left and turn on the forehand? Or do you really want me to just rock back and turn out from under you and leave you in a pile that you deserve? No, I'm kidding. But there are 3 kinds of turns that you would, and I really was just kidding about that. Nobody deserves to get dumped, but no better than some people can ask a horse to do something. It's amazing. They keep you on there. Some of them will work hard to stay underneath you, even after you ask them in a rude way. But you see, if you invite them to make that turn, and you have in mind whether you want them to take the forehand around the hips, or to send the hips in one way so the forehand can stay where it is, but it'll change its direction because of where you put those hips, or if you want just to walk off in a circle. Now this is something. If you're under the big top and you say, well, just put those horses in that Liberty Circle, that's a circle. You will say to somebody out in Idaho or the Great Basin, go on that circle. They might be talking about a 50-mile ride. You wouldn't even feel like you'd gone 1 degree on a circle. You could, from the airplane, you'd look like you did the whole ranch. That might take you 2 days, or most of it could take you a day if you were trotting. It'd take you 2 days if you're walking it, but maybe more. Depends on where you're walking. But the point is a circle, but to the horse, he has to understand what you're really asking for. In terms of his feet, what are you telling him to do? And then in your mind, you'll say, well, that's great. We get this. Perfect, Desmond. Lovely, great description of circles, but what's this got to do with backing up? I think it has a lot to do with it. Because at any point in a circle, there's also a question of speed. There's also a question of, are you just going to stumble into that circle? You're just going to trip over yourself and just get in that circle any way you can? You're just going to pull his head around, and pull means go, so you've got the accelerator and the transmission and the steering wheel all in one tidy little thing coming out the side of his mouth, which has just been pulled on for the last week by 5 other people as well. It's really important to figure out what you're doing. I might like to just deliver that horse in a circle. Say, okay, go on. That would assume that you could drive your horse. That would be drive him in lines or drive him loose. Just say, hey, go on, get out of here, clear the area. If you can't send them when they're loose, that's worrisome. So if they aren't able to be moved when they're loose, it tells you a lot about what you're going to have when you're right here, sitting on old Trigger. He might need quite a bit of coaxing. So what does the backup have to do with quite a bit of coaxing? The backup has to do, if it's done correctly, with feet that are placed, not dragged back, a body that is released upward so the weight can tip back before the feet start to walk back. If you can build that in, then you will have a backup mentality, a backup availability, an up and back shift of the total sum of your combined weight available. It's like having, what did they call that thing? There was something they made. They had that gooey stuff in those lamps. What was that thing they had, Rick, called those? That it looked terrible. It was in those, you could tip it back and forth. It was these colored lights that had all this slime in it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Lava lamp?
A lava lamp? Is that what they're called? Colored blobs that float around, and then you can chip. They're ridiculous. But your horse is like that somewhat, I'm talking about. So that the whole vessel, the whole horse itself, can rock its weight, shift its weight without having to walk to do it. This is an internal thing. I think that's why I called it an isometric. You can practice this yourself, and I'm going to tell you how. This will give you great appreciation for this exercise, I believe. Hi, everybody. I see a few names up there. I really hope this is helpful. I'm covering a lot of bases. I know it, and this is not a linear topic. I can't help it. I got to swirl around here. You're talking I just don't know I don't know how to lay it out in one line, because to me it isn't a line. It's just an explosion of possibilities between you and the horse. And I mean, let's say a celebration of possibilities. The explosions, we can stay away from those. So you want to have, okay, here, look at this. I can do it this way. I don't know if you can see this. See this water? So you want the horse to do like this. I'm keeping this bottom part still. He tips his weight here. He tips his weight here. And he does it for you and with you, not because you're making him. Because if you want it to pass from a capacity that you have to influence him on the ground and have that duplicated in the saddle, not out of force, but out of the release, down these shoulder groove, up with the shoulders, back with the weight, and pew, you can charge it forth at a gallop or walk off in style or just trot off on an arc. You can do what you want. But if you can't manage this within the two of you, you can't manage where this water being your weight, let's say. Your weight, your well-balanced weight. Okay? Now, we know at the lope, the 3-beat stride of the lope, you're going to be on 1 foot in the front and 1 foot in the back in each stride. That doesn't mean that while you're on that 1 foot in front that you somehow miraculously got all your weight in the back while it's in the air. I'm not talking about that. But as he's on that fully extended front leg, and he's gathering himself up and back and around, and that hindquarters comes under, and he's reaching with that next step, which is a hind foot, he has the ability with all the weight. Look, see, right here, tip it right out. Bob, there's your fully extended gallop right there, all the weight, just about tipping out into the front. Then when that back foot comes up, that back foot coming up to replace that to be that next step, takes all that weight back so that you have that full reach in your diagonal and your front foot again. I hope you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you can find online I do believe you have some movies on there. Don't they have clips online of gait analysis and such? Mm-hmm. You guys, I think you can find it. Now, watch it in slow motion. You'll see what I mean. I've had some conversations recently with people who differ with me on the opinion of how horses land and the cadence of the footfall and the way the foot lands. I've noticed that the most fit and capable athletic horses, most athletic, fit and capable horses that I've seen land heel first. There are people who think they land flat-footed, and there are other people who see them landing toe first and have seen only that and think it's normal and don't even know what I'm talking about. There was a chapter of the National Horse Testing Service. There's a group of people who test and certify riders, trainers and riding coaches nationally, and I know some people who were actually failed in their test on the horse landing. They said the horse lands heel first. The test said no, they land toe first. That may be all the landing those people have ever seen. Anyhow, I just know from the experience that I've had so far, and that's all I can base anything on, is that the condition of the back muscles, the abs, and the adductors, which are on the inside of your thigh panel all the way up to the groin on your horses, and yourselves, I suppose, too. I think that's the same thing. The more lateral work you can do by reaching out and reaching with your shoulder in the opposite direction. This way is a very fluid and a very graceful building block that the horse can recognize as that and use as that. This quarter turn, backing half a circle, backing a whole circle. It takes 6 months to back a whole circle. I'm not talking about Wednesday afternoon now. You can job him through it. You can whack his head and spur him and haul him and got that done, check it off the list, but it isn't ever going to be an investment you'd get much back from. By the time you can back a figure 8 around 2 cones and not see one drag foot mark, then you've got something going. I'm not putting that out as a challenge. I'm not asking you to prove that to me. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is what you and that horse can understand in terms of your capacities, so that when things are sped up and the fertilizer's hitting the fan right in front of you, that you know what you've got underneath you for a partner. Okay? So I will say that when you're backing a circle, it's extremely important to, I'm talking now from the ground, it's very important to face the back and go backwards a few steps first. Go backwards a few steps first. In this case, if this were my horse's shoulder near you, which is the horse's shoulder near you, and somebody's over here, that would be me. I would be looking that way, my horse is looking this way. We would back up together a couple of steps, and then just at the point where I'm ready to do this and take this one, somebody would take my head right over here, and my nose and shoulder would go there. And at the same time, my hip would step in front of this person, and the diagonal that is near that person, in this case, their right diagonal. I also said backing a circle to the right. That's incorrect. It would be backing a left circle if I were going this with my left shoulder. So the right diagonal would be the thing that stays on the line of the circle. So you're really on the inside of the circle if you're just looking at the tracks that you make. When it's all said and done, the horse is going to leave some tracks backing a circle. But the opening shoulder is to the outside of that circle. The person is on the inside of that circle. Now here's where it gets a little bit mixed up, and I'll draw a picture of it in a minute. I'll put it on, I will put it on my Facebook page. I'll put several more pictures up there. But the point is, you are on actually the outside of the turn. You're on the inside of the circle that is being made with the feet. But by the time the horse is opening the shoulder away from you, you are technically on the outside of that turn. And you say, well, what's a point then? The point is that as a foundation maneuver, if you're backing a 20-meter circle, that's one thing. But by the time you slow the hips down and you keep the front end going and you're backing a 1-meter circle with the hips and you're taking the shoulders through as you backing like that, well, then you've kind of backed a pirouette, haven't you? That's the point. So if you speed up backing a circle, you're going to miss the nuances. You're going to miss the detail that gives that horse enough information to reflect to you where he's weak in this exercise, where he's strong in this exercise. And if you start to think about what it requires for a race car driver to know his machine, for a skyscraper guy to know what cranes he's using to put those big things up there with all those people and all that glass and all that stuff, so vulnerable and delicate, and it gets put up there the same way the eyelashes were painted on the angels at the Sistine Chapel with a 3-hair brush. We're talking refinement now, real refinement. But as in anything, you're not going to be painting with a 3-hair brush if you don't know how to use a 9-inch roller, or a 5-inch roller, then a 2-inch roller, and then a wide brush, and so on. It's the same with the horses. So just getting to back a circle by Wednesday and take it off your checklist, it's not what I'm talking about. I hope that I am presenting this in a way that you can find some value in. Not sure. I think I have to find some photos and I'll post them and I'll reference this, okay? All of it I will put later. All of these are going to be on YouTube so that you can go on there. It would be good to subscribe on there. Just that way you'll get the feeds when they come on. Facebook has a way of losing things for somebody. You get buried in this long list of stuff year after year. So what you could do is get on there. Just get on there. That YouTube site will be soon better organized with descriptions of these things, but at the moment, I'm just trying to capture it and hold it for you so you know where to find it if it's useful. At the moment, I think I'm out of ideas. I'm already starting to think about how I would structure our talk tomorrow, which is Sunday night and then Monday night. I'm going to do 2 parts on what I'm calling the submission game, because when submission is a game, then the question of whether or not somebody's dominating would also be part of the game. But when submission is protocol and the bottom line, that's a little bit different, and it's maybe not a game. So I'm going to try to find a way of putting on a scale from dark black to up into the infinity of white, and the gray area in between, that all of us who are in horses for a lifetime or getting into it and just experience the peaks and valleys, the emotions, the successes, the failures. You want to stay away from things that can carry the permission to long-term habits that are destructive to the relationship. Okay? I'll just tell you the few things that I've learned about that. I'm going to put it in 2 parts because I won't have too much time these next 2 nights. But I think it's important to do that while it's on my mind. So, I'll see you later.